Yo, what's up, y'all? We out here back at it again, and I got something to tell you. God is love. Love implies a choice. We want that choice that God freely gives, but then we blame God for the results of our own choices. Can't have it both ways, but this is what we do all the time. We're here studying in Lamentations, chapter 3, once again, continuing on through. Check the previous videos to build up to this point, understanding what Jeremiah is trying to express here, the desolation of a nation, this outcry of all this crazy and terrible stuff that's been going on and happening to them, but also kind of a reflection on the lack of accountability that Jeremiah touches on a little bit, but he's really getting in touch with the feelings of the sadness and the despair that Israel is feeling as a result of Babylon coming in and just wrecking Jerusalem. So we continue on. And like I said, there's a little bit of accountability here in these few verses, and perhaps also a different perspective that helps us to kind of understand where he's coming from here. So once again, we're in Book of Lamentations. We're in chapter 3, continuing on. I'm gonna put the questions down below in the description that I like to use when it comes to practical Bible study. Just some things that you can kind of bounce off of each other if you're studying with somebody, or ask yourself, which I feel like puts you in a good position to say, hey, this is how I can apply this thing right here and right now. Because as I say often, if the Bible is not practical, it's useless. It's got to be practical. It must interact and change with our lives in some way. It must. Otherwise, there's no point for it. But we're looking at verses 37 through 42. This handful of verses, I think, will give us something valuable here that we can study and get a few good pointers on. We're going to get right into the text. Who is he who speaks and it comes to pass when the Lord has not commanded it? Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that woe and well-being proceed? Okay, so now you have this transition, right? Jeremiah is saying that woe and well-being proceed from God. But again, when it comes to the accountability of the people, what's really being said here? Well, there are things that we do on a conditional basis that can result in A or B. You have Adam and Eve, right? The choice was given to them whether or not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, there was one thing that would have happened if Adam and Eve didn't eat from the tree and lived according to that. And there was something else that happened because they chose the other thing. Could you say that God caused this to happen and God caused that to happen? You could, but then you'd be ignoring the responsibility of the people. If God is telling us what's going to happen from taking a certain course of action, and we take that certain course of action, it's not his fault that those things happen. There's accountability that needs to be had there, and I think we miss this. We skip over the fact that, well, what's my contribution? What responsibility do I bear in this? God is in control of everything, so he let this happen. We take the leap to say he made this happen. And again, that just takes us out of the equation, as if we can be whoever and do whatever we want to, and we should still expect only one outcome. Story after story after story in the Bible gives us this description of God saying, hey, my people, if you do this, you can expect this. And if you don't do this, you can expect this. He's not causing either one to happen. He's telling them what is the natural conclusion of their actions. Take Israel in, the wilderness, right? This is with Moses. And they do, I think it was something with the quail. Don't quote me on this. The story is there, all right? Just take my word that the story is there, but don't quote me on exactly the details of the story. I don't remember it all right now. But it's a story about the snakes entering the camp. Pretty much something happened where God's people took what God was trying to say for granted. They didn't want to follow it. And so God ends up removing the protection from the camp. You have all these snakes that come in, people are getting bitten, I think people are dying, and then there's the council that comes in to craft this serpent out of gold, I think, to put it up on a cross, and if people looked on it, they would live. And we think, man, God was really cruel for making those snakes go in there and messing up the people like that just to have them turn around and try to respect him again. But what was really happening? Did the people bear any accountability? Did they have any responsibility in what was going on? Yes, because they made a decision where God said, okay, I've been protecting you and you've taken that state of reality for granted. So I'm going to step back. I'm not going to cause these things to happen to you, but this is the natural result of what it feels like to exist outside of the bounds of my protection. And so the snakes come in and so on. We see this happen time and time again through scripture where God will clearly tell people, can't say the point enough, God will clearly let somebody know, hey, if you follow this, expect this. And if you don't do this, expect this. And people make their choices either way. And sometimes they want to blame God either way. You can't have that. So there's this understanding that God can allow both directions of things to happen, right? But we cannot forget the accountability and the responsibility on our end that may be a factor in these situations. Continuing to verse 39. Why should a living man complain, a man for the punishments of his sins? And that's the completion of the thought. Why should we complain for the punishments of our own sins? That's the acceptance of the accountability. We tend to look at God in this way as he's making all of these things happening. But what would I complain for if I'm the one who's responsible for what's going on? What are the natural conclusions? And this is the question that's raised on a personal and a practical level. Think of your life, not just in the spiritual sense, but in everything that you're doing right now. All the things that you're involved in, every little decision that you make. What is the natural conclusion? What is the fullest extent of that decision? What is the natural conclusion? How far will it take you? What will be the end result if you continue on that path? For a lot of things, it can be something that's very good. And you're like, you know what? That makes it worth it to keep on this path. But for some of the decisions that we make, the end conclusion is not good. And we can try to put ourselves in a position of saying, well, I can get away with it for now. It's not that deep. But what happens when these things stack up over time? Getting physical, right? Training. I can't even find my words right now. But getting active and being fit. And its opposite. These are things that have natural conclusions to them, right? If I wake up and run, I'm like, okay, I don't want to wake up and run, but I'm going to get up and do it. What is the natural conclusion to continuing that habit day after day? Or consistently at the very least? Chances are it's going to be a positive one. I get more healthy, my body gets stronger, my legs get stronger, I get faster, and so on. That's a pretty good end result. On the flip side, what if I'm actively making a decision every day to not get up and run, or to not go to the gym? Or if I'm saying consistently, I'm not going to go into fitness or to think about these kinds of things. Well, the natural conclusion of that is maybe a body that you're not proud of, maybe dealing with health issues that are scientifically proven to arise from health concerns and a lack of fitness. You think of high blood pressure, all these things that can be lowered with consistent exercise. I can't blame anyone but myself for not getting up and taking the time, even though it sucks to get up early. That's on me. I have to take accountability for that. What is the natural conclusion? It could be something as simple as saving a penny a day or not making any attempt to save at all. What is the natural end conclusion of these choices that we make, seemingly insignificant on a day-to-day basis? You talk about the butterfly effect. Same concept, right? And we think about, well, the wings of a butterfly flying on this side of the world can cause like a hurricane on the other side of the world. It sounds ridiculous and it probably doesn't work exactly like that. But if we think about it not in terms of space, but in terms of time, what does my little action today mean for me a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, and so on? You get what I'm saying? So we have to keep this in mind. What's the natural end result of the decisions I'm making, for good or for bad? And then I have to make those choices based on that analysis. And whatever is the outcome of that, that's on me. That's not God arbitrarily saying that I'm going to do this to you because of this, and so on. All right? So there is a little bit of ownership that I have to be willing to take and understand where my actions fit into the big picture of things. Verses 40 through 42 here. This, I think, is the key. Let us search out and examine our ways and turn back to the Lord. Now, if somebody tells you to brush your teeth, what is the implication? Probably that your breath is kicking. At the very minimum, if someone tells you to brush your teeth, the assumption is that you have not brushed your teeth. If someone tells you to eat your broccoli or to eat your greens, it's probably because the greens are still sitting there on your plate because you haven't eaten them. If someone tells you to tie your shoes, it's probably because they notice that your shoes are untied. You get the point. Majority of the time, especially in a biblical context, when a Bible writer or God is telling someone to do something, it's not just because it's a good thing to say or because it's a good state of mind to reflect on, oh, that was a good idea. It's because it's needed, because it isn't happening, right? And yet a lot of times when we go through scripture and when we look at these stories, and even when we engage with people on a one-to-one basis and we think of the things that people are telling us, we don't take it internally as a recognition that, wait a second, maybe this is an area where I can level up or step up my game. We look at it as, well, that's a good idea, thanks for sharing. And we keep it pushing. But here, if Jeremiah is saying, let us search out and examine our ways, the implication is that we have not searched out and examined our ways. We have not been self-critical. We've kind of been operating in this bubble with these assumptions, and that's the reason why we're caught off guard. He says, and turn back to the Lord. The implication is that they've turned away from the Lord. Now, when you think of all that's happened through the first couple chapters of this book, this is what it comes down to right here. A turning away from God, the natural consequence of turning away from God is the things that we see happen in the beginning half of this book. So he's trying to encourage them and say, hey, look, I know that we have all these things going on. I know it really sucks. I know we're in despair. I am as well. Like, this is hard because our relationship with God is being strained, but here's what we need to consider. Let us search out and examine our ways and turn back to the Lord. Verse 41, let us lift our hearts and hands to God in heaven. Our hands and our hearts. That not just the outward, but the inward. What's the implication? If Jeremiah is saying that we need to do this, the implication is that it wasn't happening on a large scale. Verse 42, we have transgressed and rebelled, you have not pardoned. There are no free passes. You cannot escape the consequences of your own actions. You think of, there are things that are hereditary, that are passed down, and there's a whole debate on all of this in terms of, does it doom you or destine you to being the same way, to being an alcoholic or whatever, addicted to A, B, or C? Or is it something that you have some measure of control over? There might be some things that you are prone to and that you have a tendency to naturally, but it doesn't mean that that's all that there is in some cases. In a lot of situations, you may have some input or some control to a degree of how much those tendencies and those hereditary traits can influence you. But it's taking that accountability and saying, I'm going to change this, or I'm going to do what I can to mitigate this. You know, I think about it being a member of the Black community. What kinds of things do we accept as being, well, this is just what it is, so that's how it is, and not take accountability, right? I'm not saying that there aren't things and systems and structures out there that are kind of working against the people. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that there's no free passes. And if I understand what's going on, I can't just sit there and expect things to change. I need to do something different if I want to expect something different. There are no free passes. We cannot escape the consequences of the things that we do. And despite things that are bearing down on me, if my choice is to do nothing, I can continue to expect nothing. It's interesting. We don't really like to think about it in that sense. There's a lot of discussions on, I'm not getting into all that right now, but you get where I'm coming from. I need to take accountability. I need to be responsible for my actions and my inactions. And I need to look carefully at what is the end result of these choices or lack of choices. They say that even not making a choice is a choice. Don't forget that. It's true. And we have a lot more control and power over our own experience than we like to admit. It's easier to say everyone else has more influence in our lives than us. It's easier to do that because then I don't have to accept accountability. I don't need to be responsible. I don't need to get up in the couch and move. I don't need to search out and examine my ways because it's your problem. I don't need to turn back to anything because the direction I'm facing right now is perfect. I don't need to lift up my hands and my heart to God because my hands are doing the right thing and my heart is in the right place already. No, I need to take accountability. I need to be responsible. I need to own that. And in owning that, in owning the relationship with God here, we can find the positive. Israel can find the positive in what's going on and how to move forward through this. They can understand the lesson, the consequence, the truth of what's happening here, and move forward still even more confident in their relationship with God. I realize that's something that I need to do better myself. And we live in a society, I think, that increasingly wants to give out free passes. And what it increasingly wants to do is not hold people accountable for the things that they do. It increasingly suggests that, no, you can get away with this and you can do this and you don't need to bear responsibility for that. I think of in a place like social media where people behind there, you got the keyboard warriors, right? They're not accountable. They're not responsible to how their words might influence somebody else. And because they don't have to put their face on it, because they don't have to put their real name on it, they're like, it doesn't matter. They think that there's a free pass there, but we know that words impact people more than we think, more than we give it credit for. You think of people who are actually doing things like in real life streaming, and they're going out here being a nuisance and just bothering people because of their own selfish desires. And you have people watching this and enjoying this for the same reasons, as if there's no accountability there. Like there's no responsibility to do right by your fellow human being. And what are we talking about? This is the world that we live in. We live in a world that's trying to give free passes. And then when somebody has a problem with something that was said online or something that was done in real life stream, now I want to get upset like you're taking away, you're taking something from me. What are we talking about? We got to be better than that. We got to be better than that. And that's what Jeremiah is talking about right here. And that's something that we can take right out of the biblical narrative and apply practically to our day-to-day experiences. Be reflective on the choices that we make, even the little ones. Be willing to analyze and ask the question, what does this look like if I keep on doing this consistently, or if I don't do this consistently? And then realize that, you know what? Maybe I can be a little bit more accountable and have a little bit more responsibility in my life. That's going to make my existence better. And it's going to make the existence of the people around me better too. So, Lamentations, it's hard hitting, man. It's the self-reflection piece. It doesn't get any more personal than that. But that, I think, is what we need from this. If these stories aren't encouraging us to be better people, not just for our own sake, but for the people around us that we engage with on a day-to-day basis, then again, I think we're missing the point, and we're really making Scripture a lot less than it should be. It's not just about truth. It's not just about theology. It's not just about old stories. It's not just about origins. It's about how can this stuff impact me today and help me to change my life for the better and the lives of the people around me for the better. That's what it's about. In the midst of situations that are not fair, that you may not have been the cause for, that you feel are unjust, and that you feel are horrible, we can still find strength and reflection in that relationship with God to be better and to do better. That's what it's about. All right, I'm gonna leave it there, and I'll catch you in the next Lamentations video as we get close to the end of these last couple chapters. Short book, but it's got some deep things for us to consider. But yeah, we out here and we out. I'll catch you. Peace.
We out here, we out. So, subscribe, like, subscribe, share.